Hey guys, FatBuddyCat here. How you doing? Today, we're going to be changing the brake rotor on my Trailmaster MB200-2. Alright, and today we are going to be installing a Coleman KT196 brake rotor on our Trailmaster. While we're there, we're going to be putting in some new bearings. I'm going to start by loosening up the tensioners and the axle. I already have the chain removed from yesterday when I was working on the jack shaft. At this point, guys, we're going to want to get it off the kickstand and get a jack under it. I find it's best to position the kickstand somewhere under where this main part of the frame comes down, and it gets the rear wheel off and puts the front wheel on. When it sits like that, it's pretty much like it's hanging off of a bench. So the rear end, it's all yours. We're going to be removing the axle next. When you set the tension for your chain, you want to make sure that you loosen and unloosen this bolt. Well, we're not worried about the tension right now. We're just worried about having things held where they need to be. So I'm going to try to leave that right there so that our caliper and everything stays in place. Alright, before I pull my axle off, I always make a diagram. And what this is the axle comes in through this side of the bike. Alright, this would be a frame. And then we would have our small spacer, brake adapter, medium spacer, wheel, tire, brake, hubs, whatever. And then we have the large spacer. Alright, that'd be like our frame. That's where the tensioner would be. And then our nut on the outside. As you can see, my brake caliper is firm, right? It's held right where it needs to be. Everything dropped right down. Spacer, axle. One of my spacers is still in there. So, whatever. That's cool. But we own this now. So, all we need to do is remove these 4 bolts and swap it out. Alright, I'm set up over here on the bench, and get a quick comparison. You can see this is a direct bolt on. I mentioned this is a Coleman KT196 brake rotor. I got this idea from a friend, Mr. Jack Link. He's an experienced builder, and he said, in my case, this might actually help. Alright, this has different, I guess we could call it cross drilling in it. It might dissipate heat differently, and it may react differently with the stock caliper and the stock pads. My next step from here, guys, would be maybe a different rotor than this, and an upgrade to the caliper. So before we get that far, we're going to find out how this does. In taking my old rotor off and looking at it, we can see, alright, how much it is actually worn. If you look even closer, you can see where some of that cross hatching still is. I'm going to assume that this can be resurfaced somehow. We'll keep that. Alright, now it's just as easy as lining it up with the holes. The other rotor is a little bit thicker in the center. Okay, this one is a lot lighter. I'm actually really surprised. Wow. Not, I mean, it's not a lot, but it's noticeable. It's substantial. All right, and I think I'm gonna try to add a lock washer when I put these back on. All right, those ended up spacing out pretty good. Right to the end of my threads, a little bit sticking out. I have these torqued on pretty nice. I'll keep an eye on them. If I have any issues, I might go with a longer bolt and definitely add some Loctite. I can't live with it, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and take out the lock washer. Alright, and depending on how good your observational skills are, you'll notice I punched the bearings out too. Like I said, we're replacing those. In the process, I minged up the end of my bushing a little bit. So I'm going to grab Kyle, one of his friends, and file a nice tapered edge on the inside and out of this. Okay, it's not beautiful, but nothing's going to be in the way of our axle passing through. We did that on both sides. Next up, we're going to be inserting the bushing and the two bearings. Still has a little bit of water in it from where I cleaned it out, but I'm going to spread these rubber rings out evenly, stick it down inside. There's that bearing number in case you need it. I try to buy decent ones. I buy these in 10 packs. We're going to get a pick, open them up, and add a little bit of our own lube anyway. Yeah, those are good and juicy. They'll last a long time. I have one of them in, double checking to make sure that my bushing is in there, and then I'm going to add my bearing. I might need a rubber mallet, something to tap that in with. Okay, make sure your bearing is completely seated on both sides. Alright, so here's the part where we get to see if you were paying attention. I forgot that there is a brake, we'll call it a brake adapter. Alright, if you look between, to the left of the tensioner, right, that's the frame, and then connected to the frame you have the caliper. Alright, you see that? Okay, and then you have the bolts that hold the rotor onto the hub. Alright, now look up there. Alright, these bolts are gonna hit right on that adapter piece, so we're gonna have to go back to the regular heads, but I do have the long ones. Okay, everything checks out. I made sure that my tensioners are both on there. They're both the right way. Last thing I'm gonna do over here, guys, get my nut on there. and just give it the finger torque for now. I'm going to drop my bike down, get the jack out of there, put the chain on. Okay, we're not making any changes to the suspension or the sprocket or the geometry at this point. This chain was already set before, so we're just looking for tension. We don't have to do anything fancy. What I do like to do is use a tape measure, and I just get a measurement from the back of my swing arm out to a face somewhere, alright? And then I do the same thing on the other side. Get it to where I feel good. I finger torque my nut in right there, and then I'll start to tighten my axle bolt, just so I can pay attention to the chain. If it gets too loose, I'll back off, give it a little bit of tension. If it's too tight, loosen it, give it the old knee bump. Know what I'm saying? Real simple. Do not forget to loosen this bolt before you start doing all this chain tension stuff. As I'm tightening my axle bolt, the chain is going a little bit tighter, but it's just where I want it. You're going to torque it to 40 foot-pounds, and then just snug up your tensioner nuts. Alright, so for the next part, I'm going to remove the seat. Mine's held on with a bolt in the back and a bolt in the front. There's what that spline looks like from the bottom of the seat. The front, just a bolt, a couple washers and a nut. And in the back, I welded the bolt so that it's a stud. It makes it a lot easier to put in. It's probably best that you go outside for the next part. It's also best that you grab yourself a brand new cutoff wheel. This next part, this might hurt a little. Old FatBuddyCat, I'm not going to feel a thing. Oh yeah, that just happened. Oh, but wait, there's more. and the hits just keep on coming. Okay, so this is a hydraulic brake adapter from OMB Warehouse. Gray Goat sent that to me, and I just used it to lay out some triangles. I took a pulley, but all I was after was, this circumference, and I held it halfway on my rounded triangle and traced it. For these smaller ones, I used a piece of 5/8, shaft, little half circle action. These I'll definitely be able to do with the step bit. Those, I could start them with the step bit, I guess. See what happens. Alright, I'm just going around cleaning things up a little bit. It's kind of hard to get back in here, but I want to leave some of those booger snots anyway. I'm going to be using this in the future, so we cleaned it off. They have like this welded plate back here that's for the hanger for the light originally, and it's kind of a pain to grind off of there, but that's done. Back here, cleaned up these welds, and I cleaned up the weld from the rack that was on this thing. I'm not a very big fan of that rack. Reason being is it loops through from the main frame here, right? There's no weld, it bends, it comes back around, and then they do a weld on this side, all right? The rest of the rack, it's got the fender hanger on it, but it's not cantilevered back into the main frame anywhere. So it's gonna have a tendency to pull down. If you try to trailer this thing and you use that for your tie down spot, just be cautious. I got the tenors on here right now. I'm going to be upgrading my suspension at some point. As you upgrade your suspension, guys, say you go with those 12s with the HDs, the load on those is heavier. So when you go to tie down your bike and you're pulling down, chances are this is not going to hold up to the load that your shocks can handle. Guess what happens? That's right. So I ground down that weld. I cut a piece of angle iron, cleaned it up good. Whoop. And that's just going to be going on. It might be the other way. Custom cut, guys, all right? Yeah, all right. Just like that. Okay. I'll weld that on, tack it on the bottom of the tube, weld that side, call it good. All right. Or I'll weld it up, cleaned up on this rear section. I think that's good enough. We're building go bikes, not show bikes around here. Next thing, I'm gonna tape it off. I'm gonna smack it around a little with that high heat grill paint. All right, we're all done at FBC House of Colors. Now all we can do, wait for it to dry. Right on. It's all painted up, guys. That's a nice black enamel, all right, that's on there. And it's kind of close to what the stock paint is. There's a little transition of the old scumbag overspray, but that'll fade in and that part will be under the seat anyway. So this, guys, is all designed for bolt-on fenders. All right, there they are right there. I have my hardware. This is all welded with, you know, good stuff. It's 7018, so nice and strong. Okay, last part of my fitment is my exhaust. I have a spline welded in down there, but I haven't done one up here yet, and I'm ever so slightly gonna touch my fender. I believe when I heated this and bent it before, I went this way, so I'm gonna heat it up and carefully try to bend it back the other direction a little bit, and we'll see if it fits. And if everything works, I'll end up having to, you know, clean this up and cut another gusset for this thing. That'll work. Okay, like I said, this is a very tough header, and that is not going to bend. I heated it up pretty good, guys. I'm still going to be adding that spline section to it, but where that's going to be permanent, I'm going to go ahead and do the notch modification on my fender. Meh, something like that. Just going to clean that up a little. Alright, and with my exhaust tightened up and the fender in place and also tight, you can see we're not touching anywhere. Right about there, you can tell looking at it from the side, we would have been a fat eighth, maybe a quarter inch into that thing. We're not touching, so I'm going to try to find some sort of a exhaust tape that I can adhere to this plastic, and I'm just going to like box out a section. That'll look pretty rad. Maybe I'll get some. Here's an even better idea, right? Leave this how it is. Put some on this anyway, just to make it look cool. But I could wrap this as well. We'll see how it goes. Other than that, guys, you go right behind the shock here with a screwdriver. See the Phillips up there? Alright, and one on that side, and there's what you got underneath. Each one has a washer. I have lock washers and nylock nuts. Up front, same thing. Going for that nice stock kind of thing, you know? Stay tuned, guys, because we have plenty of modifications to go on this Trailmaster MB200-2. Because as always, it's a work in progress. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. I'll catch you on the next one.